today we are going deep into sub-Saharan Africa for this business idea. You ready to go?
Yeah, I've got a wealth of knowledge of that area of the world. Yeah, great. Let's go.
So, about 15 years ago, I ran a very small charity doing microloans in rural Uganda. So you'd loan $50 to someone, and then they would buy some goats, and then they pay the money back, and then they
would they genuinely buy goats, or is that just you saying that?
Genuinely, yeah. I mean, the businesses they would invest in or they would start would generally be sort of small holdings. So they'd buy chickens, goats,
really? Oh, okay.
Or they might set up a little store selling clothes or grain or something.
What would the goats do for milk?
Not sure the specifics.
Okay, sorry, carry on.
Some kind of, but some kind of animal business. So, like, envisage you go 2 hours from Kampala in one of those old sort of Japanese minivans, and you're getting further and further and further off grid down this main road, and then you turn right, and the tarmac stops, and then you keep going for another hour, and then you are in the mangroves and the mud huts, and then you've got a group of women sitting around, and they're your investment, and they are buying chickens. They want to buy 60 chickens in their village to set up a chicken business where they're going to, do some eggs or whatever.
Yeah,
that's the vibe.
Okay.
And a few things that we noticed. So people would always repay. So we lent into groups. So there'd be a group of like 5 or 6, and then they would borrow it as a group and pay it back as a group. We charge fairly high interest because we would then take that interest and lend that to other people. And also because the business model could sustain pretty high interest because they could make quite a high return quite quickly on the businesses they were starting. Because it was a charity, it always had funding issues. You'd always have to go out and get more money and run an event and that kind of thing. So scale was never going to happen with the way that we were doing it. I would love to see this turned into a for-profit business where you offer these investments to people in the UK, the US, Western Europe. So envisage a scenario, right? You want to invest some fun capital. You've got £200-400. You're like, you know what? I could go on and buy some stocks, or I could try something really exotic. And that's where we come in. You log on and you've got 300 different entrepreneurs in rural Uganda that have all their different ideas, goats, chickens, whatever. And you can say, cool, I'm going to put £50 to this idea, £40 to this idea, £80 to this idea. And then you can monitor through your app how these investments are going and when the repayment comes back. So you can make a good return. I think you could make, somewhere between 5 and 10% easily a year deploying this capital. And then us as the business, we provide the platform. And then we also do the infrastructure in country. So you've got some technology, of course, that the person can put their profile on, but you've also got a person that takes the cash, visits the entrepreneurs, explains to them the interest situation, goes and collects the interest, comes back, sends the money back to the UK. So there's a whole kind of infrastructure piece to this, which is by far the hardest piece because there's a big security concern around it is one of the real issues driving around with all that money. But I think huge demand in rural Uganda for capital, huge. They cannot get it, particularly women, because they just don't get left any money in inheritance. So they're really, really in a tough spot. And then huge demand, I think, in the UK. People will find it like an interesting thing to do. They'll want to invest, partly to make a return, but probably partly to help and for it to be a fun thing. And then you make your return, you take a percentage of the return for the UK investor.
Yeah, okay. When you did this as a charity, what was your default rate? Do you remember?
Basically zero. I mean, it was zero.
Okay. What were the ticket sizes? How much you invest in each time?
Between $100 and $500 to a group, right?
I mean, yeah, to a group. Yeah, so you've got 5 people coming together, $500,
that sort of
$100
thing,
each type stuff. And that and I really don't know the Ugandan economy, that is enough to be able to get cracking on something.
It's capital way, way, way beyond what these people could access anywhere else.
Okay, and what kind of terms were you kind of putting to them? You know, I mean, I know you said 5 to 10% there, but is that like over a year, 2 years? I mean, how long were you giving?
We would normally, let's say you give them $100 and you're just like, cool, give $120 back in 6 months, something like that. But it was pretty simple. It slightly depended on the model, on what they were doing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the principal thing to create opportunity. I think is a great thing, right? To be able to go and do that. If you're going to go and spend, £100 down in Tooting Bec at the wheat sheaf, you might as well go and do this. It's certainly downside more rewarding. I think a cool thing to do is any profits that you did make would be to be investing it back into the community. You know, so you take a chunk of your profits as the company and reinvest back into that community. So you're adding good as well. A little bit like your charity did, right? You took the interest and then you kind of supported and supported and supported. How do you do the on the ground stuff? I mean, that's going to be hectic, right?
So you
because no bank accounts. I would imagine there might be some telephone banking. I would imagine through mobile. But I don't suppose the majority of the target audience will be with banks.
Yeah, it's predominantly cash. I think there's probably more tech now than there was, 10 years ago when we did this. But then it was predominantly cash. You send the money. There's a bank branch in the nearest city, which could be 3 hours away from where you're deploying the capital. So your area manager gets the cash, goes with his laptop, distributes the cash, and then goes back again in the collection time in six months. They normally do it like set up in like a local community centre or like the local cafe or something to do that. And they sort of say, cool, we're coming back on this date. And there's a contact in the group. So I think the biggest issue with it was just security. So if you're traveling around rural Uganda with that kind of money, there's a risk there. So yeah, that's the one thing that you have to be really careful with.
Yeah, it's the distribution of the capital, isn't it? In a non-digitized community, if you didn't have that hurdle and people were able to go and get access to the funds to be able to go and spend those in the community, like it didn't need to be cash, it'd be great, wouldn't it? But that cash element, because of the nature of the way business is done over there, would be challenging, I think. But I think, look, in principle, Doug, for $100 to $500 or whatever it is, to be able to understand what you're doing for that person, then connect with that person. It'd be great to hear the stories of how they're getting on. If you could do that also back to the investment group, I think that'd be a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, but also,
sorry,
Rich.
Yeah. No,
also, like, this is a good business. This is not just helpful. We're going to help some people in rural Uganda. This is like you could deploy. Just in that region, you could probably deploy 500,000, 1 million. And I think you could probably take 10-12% on that. Okay, that's not huge, but that's 120,000, and then you just get that. You go into other regions. Even like Uganda would support a lot of investment. Could be up to $10 million. And then how many countries around the world need this?
Yeah, it's the micro investment, low risk, and you'd be able to model out what your defaults look like and how you can cover that. So you'd have to model that out, because there will be defaults, and you're never collecting if what you're going to do. You just can't if it doesn't work out, because these invariably will be business endeavours. I know selling eggs and stuff is food, so there's probably a consistent demand for that, but you'd probably need to do a little bit of DD on what the jobs businesses were and how they were looking to utilise the cash. But if you could model in your defaults, yeah, I'm sure you could make a good business. It's not going to be like, I don't know how much the cost to serve is on the ground. Wouldn't know how much that cost to serve is. How'd you go? Acquiring customers in the UK and the US, you'd know that from a marketing perspective. But I should imagine with that kind of story and that kind of ticket size, it's not charitable, but it's a giving opportunity for sure. And I think that would resonate.
And then probably what you do, right? Once you've deployed $2 or $3 million out there and you've got the infrastructure in place, you probably do slightly bigger deals. So there's people in Uganda that need 40,000 because they want to set up a a cross-country lorry business or a big pineapple exporting business, and then you do these slightly bigger ticket deals, and you can make more on those. So you use this as a kind of almost top of funnel.
Yeah, but I think to do that, I mean, there's obviously a lot of issue with, you'd need alternative credit referencing methods, wouldn't you? You're not going to go and plug this person into Experian and get anything out. But if they've been with you for a while and they've taken those loans and they've paid those loans back, by that, in that process, they will have generated a credit history with you to a degree. But it's how you manage that risk, and understanding that your investors back in the UK or the US or wherever that money comes from, could come from anywhere, understand that risk, I guess, and what the penalties are and things. But I think if you could get to that point with a cap and model out what the risks would be, I think it could be interesting. Micro investment. I don't think it's going to be, banks ain't going to touch it, are they? That's why I think these alternative lending methods are quite interesting.
No bank is going to touch this. It's just not worth their time. They don't have the infrastructure for it.
It's too small. Way too small. Way. But there's no reason why you couldn't set up a business that's dedicated to raising this awareness and this opportunity, somehow get around the legalities of it and how you actually do that and how you set up the funding vehicle, how you distribute all the capital, all the rest of it, and then figure out how on earth you do it on the ground. You need a business partner on the ground understanding Uganda, or wherever you're operating. If you could overcome those three things, you could probably have a business that would be fairly significant and have a very substantial impact into many communities, I would think.
We are creating an asset class there.
Yes, you are, Doug. You are creating
an asset class. Yeah. I don't think you're excited enough about this. I am.
You're juiced.
I think it's hard to envisage. It's hard. You obviously understand it intellectually, but I think it's kind of hard to envisage the scale of this, the amount of people you can lend to. And it's also, like you said, I do just think the marketing side in the UK is going to be so simple. People are going to buy into this. As a marketer, this is just like fantasy. This is just people will love this. And the way that the due diligence and stuff is fine because it's all self-policing. The people on the ground, they feel like they're letting the community down if they don't pay the money back. Look, I mean, there's issues. I'm sure someone that knows about microlending would see issues in this.
Yeah, but that's not us. We're here to discuss high ideas at a high level and then see if people take that and kind of progress that. Just a quick one: is that charity still running that you used to work for?
Yeah, in a slightly different guise. Yeah.
Okay, but they're still doing that kind of lending, still doing that local community support with funds.
Lending is part of it. They do other stuff now as well, education, that kind of thing.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks, Doug. I think that was an interesting.
Someone should do it.
As usual. Yeah, someone should do it. As usual, everybody who's listening or watching, please do hit a like button, share, subscribe. If you've got any ideas that you think Doug and I should bring to the show, do comment below. And thank you very much. Take care, Doug. Bye now.